Oh, hey there. I think we're gonna go for a run today with the new Apple Watch Ultra and the Garmin Fenix 7X to see what these two are all about. Let's go. Hello there, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave from Chase the Summit, and in today's video we're going on a real-life adventure on a little bit of a trail run and hike on my local trails to see what it's like to use the brand new Apple Watch Ultra as compared to the Garmin Fenix 7X that I'm wearing on my other wrist. And along the way we're going to see what it's like using these watches side by side for all the interactions that I use these watches for, which is going to be things like navigation, the visibility of the display, the waypoint support, things like that, along with the mapping and the compass app and all of that stuff. And at the end of my run, we're also going to document how much battery life we used during this activity to get the lowdown on that as well. So yeah, this is just kind of a real life use case scenario. There's a lot of variables at play here. If you want to see more of an in-depth review about the Apple Watch Ultra or the Garmin Fenix 7X, I have separate videos about them where I go through all of the features. In this video today, it's sort of a high level, what is it actually like to use these things in the field? All right, first things first, I'm going to go ahead and start my activity on the Garmin. First, we're going to note the battery life here. So we've got 69% on the Garmin Fenix 7X. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click this top left button, or top right button rather, scroll up to trail run. I'm going to click the button again. I'm going to skip the workout for today. And then I'm going to wait for that to get a GPS fix, which is very quick. You can see that top already turned green. That means I'm ready to head off on my activity. And I'm going to go ahead and hit go. And now we're off on our GPS activity. Now we're going to do the same thing on the Apple Watch Ultra. I've already mapped my action button to go into the workout, so I'm just going to click that. There's no trail run activity on the Apple Watch Ultra, so I'm just going to click outdoor run. And we're going to wait until we've got a little solid colored arrow in the corner here that indicates we have a GPS fix. It's taking a little longer than the Garmin. Oh, screen turned off. And there we go. So it's solid blue arrow, means we have a GPS fix. And now I can go and press the action button again to start my activity, and we're off and running. One more thing to note about the Apple Watch Ultra is that I am at 100% on the battery at the start of the activity. It's fully charged. Another thing to keep in mind is that on my Apple Watch Ultra, I do have it in low power mode. The only thing low power mode's doing for me is limiting how often it's checking in with my phone, which I have the iPhone in my vest here. So it's limiting how often it communicates with the phone, so it doesn't draw too much battery using the Bluetooth connection or Wi-Fi or any of that stuff. It's limiting all of that, but I still get full-blown accuracy in my activity. Low power mode also disables the always-on display, so you can see when I turn my watch over and turn it back, it's turning on and off as I gesture to look at the screen, but it's really not that big a deal for me. I don't mind the always-on display being turned off. Another thing I want to do on the Apple Watch Ultra is drop a waypoint for my starting point. I'm going to click on the compass app again. I'm going to click on this little pin icon at the bottom left corner here. It's going to locate where I am on a map. You can see the map there, the time and date, and my longitude and latitude. I can give it a color or whatever. I don't really care, so I'm just going to hit done to mark the beginning of my activity. Now on the Garmin, I don't need to mark my starting point, because if I scroll through the pages here, I'll get to my map page, which is here, and you can see my map page is a full-blown topo map. So I can see all the details of the trail and all the information around me. I don't need to rely on just setting a waypoint for my starting location. We'll talk about mapping a little bit later on this video. Now, in terms of settings on the Garmin Fenix 7X, I've got it in default settings out of the box. So that means the brightness is at like 30%. It's got an 8-second timeout on the display. There's a whole bunch of settings in the Garmin Fenix in terms of battery life and power management. So I'm not going to go through all of the settings. Just know it's an out of the box settings. In my GPS settings, I'm using all systems, which is the default settings for GPS when you take it out of the box. All right, we are 5 minutes into this activity and I haven't done any running yet, so I'm gonna go ahead and run through here because this is a super fun single track on this trail, and then we'll check in down the road. Hey, quick interruption. Are you enjoying this video? If you are, maybe consider heading down and giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel down below, because that really helps me out. And if you're interested in picking up any of the watches I'm showing in this video, check out the links down below because those help support my channel. Okay, let's get back to it. Ooh, it is beautiful out here today. We are in fall up here in New England and Massachusetts. The leaves are starting to turn and come down. Everything's starting to dry up, and guess what? There's no bugs. Today is perfect running weather. Let's talk visibility for a second. As you can see here, the Garmin Fenix 7X is pretty easy to see if you put it in direct sunlight and you hit it at the right angle, like right there. Pretty easy to see, right? But as soon as we get some reflection or start to get into the shade a little bit, it gets a little bit harder to see at a glance. So I find myself flicking my wrist up, even though it's an always on display. I do have to flick my wrist so I can see the text by turning on the backlight. So you can see there, the backlight's on. It's a little bit easier to read. But if we compare it to something like the Apple Watch Ultra, you can see this thing is really easy to read. It is super bright. Sure, the display turns off because I don't have it in always on display mode, but man, this display is very easy to read in just about any lighting condition. You can see here we're in direct sunlight, so it's pretty bright here, and you can still read the text on the display super easy. It's very easy to read. The Garmin Fenix 7X, while easy to read in the right lighting, can be a little challenging in some situations. So that's just one thing I wanted to point out. I feel like the debate whether or not the memory and pixel display on the Fenix 7 is better than the OLED display on the Apple Watch Ultra will be endless, and in the comments I'm sure I'll get a lot of hate for this, but I think in most situations I prefer looking at the Apple Watch Ultra's display. It's just really nice to look at, and honestly it's just easier to read in most situations. All right, now I want to talk about music controls between the Apple Watch Ultra and the Garmin Fenix 7X, because you might be surprised, both of these watches can control the music from your phone. So if I'm mid-activity on this Garmin Fenix 7, let me make that display a little easier to see, I can go ahead and hold the lower left button here. And now I've got my music menu, My Music, which would be Spotify or Amazon Music or iHeartRadio, which I can download using Garmin Connect, or I can go down to Control Phone and click on that. Now I've got various tools here to control my phone's music, like play, pause, and volume up and down right from my watch. And in my situation right now, I've got my phone kind of buried away in my running vest. So having these controls right here is super handy. Now, of course, the Apple Watch Ultra is a really powerful smartwatch, so I have it here as well. And all I have to do here is swipe to the right during my activity, and I've got my full suite of phone controls for music here as well. And if I wasn't in low power mode, I could actually stream music right from the internet directly to my watch, to the earbuds that I'd be wearing. So really powerful. It's definitely on a different level compared to the Garmin Fenix 7 when it comes to music, but at least the Garmin Fenix 7 does have music capabilities, including Spotify, that you can download to the internal storage of the watch, but you can also control your phone. And on the Apple Watch Ultra, you can store music to the internal storage. You can also control your phone, and you have that added flexibility of using the cellular connection for music as well. However, even though the Fenix 7X does have music controls and some smarts, you will get notifications if you get a text message on your phone or an Instagram message or something like that. Even during activities, you'll get those notifications on your Garmin. However, on the Apple Watch Ultra, it takes it to the next level where you can actually respond to those messages right on the watch. If you get a text message or an Instagram message, you can talk right into your watch, record a message, and send it back to the person that sent you a message, which makes things a lot quicker. On the other hand, if you are using your Garmin with an Android device, you can respond to text messages with a series of pre-configured messages that you set up in Garmin Connect. However, if you have an iPhone and you're using a Garmin, you don't get that functionality at all. That's just because Apple is Apple, and they make it really hard for Garmin to do things like that. So that functionality is only for Android users. Another thing to note about Apple Watch Ultra is, thanks to that new watchOS update, we now get 6 data fields per page. So you can see I've got my pace, my distance, etc., and I've got 6 data fields on my page, and Siri is recording what I'm saying right now. Awesome. However, if we look at the Garmin Fenix 7X, you can see I get up to 8 data fields, which is a ton of information at a glance. I've got my heart rate, my distance, my pace, my timer, etc. There's a bunch of timers because I haven't configured this page yet, but you can have up to 8 data fields, which is awesome. And of course, in terms of smartwatch features that I would want when I'm out on a run, a really nice feature of the Apple Watch Ultra is the fact that it has a built-in microphone and speaker. And that built-in microphone and speaker are actually really good. The speaker is very loud, and the microphone is made up of 3 microphones built into the perimeter of the watch that isolate your voice even in really loud environments. I'm doing an audio test on the Apple Watch Ultra. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Do you want to be in my video?
Yeah, with those like Disney songs playing in the background.
Oh yeah, that'll be a copyright strike. Now when it comes to the Garmin Fenix 7X, unfortunately there is no microphone or speaker built in, even though it's 2022, we haven't gotten there yet. Maybe in the next version, but for now, you cannot make phone calls or take phone calls on your Fenix 7X. Okay, now I just want to talk quickly about usability between these two watches. So on the Apple Watch Ultra, they made a big improvement by including the new action button, which is a physical button on the side of the watch. And on top of the action button, you also get the digital crown, which is a button as well, and the side button. So there is some tactile buttons that you can use when you have sweaty hands, it's raining, you're wet, when the touch screen isn't all that useful. So when you're out on a run, you can use the digital crown to scroll through your different data fields to see all of your information, so you don't need to touch the screen, which is great. And you can also configure the 2 side buttons to pause your activity when you're got to your car or whatever, which I just did there, and you can use the action button to start your activity. So all that's great. The only issue I run into is when I need to do other stuff. So if I need to go to my Compass app to navigate back to the beginning of my activity, I still need to go to the home screen. Oops, just paused it. You can see how easy that is. Click on the side button there to bring up my app drawer. Then I have to navigate around to find the Compass app, which is right here. And now, even though I'm in the Compass app, I still have to do something if I want to navigate. I have to go ahead and touch the screen here to start a backtrack. Now, if we compare that to the Garmin Fenix 7X, I can use the touchscreen by swiping around, but I can do literally everything in this watch without the touchscreen, which is a huge advantage for being a sports watch. That means if it's downpour raining, it's snowing, my hands are super sweaty, or I'm in water, I don't have to worry about needing to use the touchscreen. I can use the buttons to navigate around this watch and do everything without using the touchscreen. In fact, I can dive into the settings here, scroll around, and turn the touchscreen completely off, so that way I can't accidentally swipe on my screen. You can see now when I'm swiping, nothing's happening because I turned that touchscreen off. And I gotta tell you, when it comes to being a sports watch, buttons are always better than touchscreens. Just kind of the way it is, unfortunately. Another consideration from a trail running or hiking perspective is going to be safety. Now, both these watches do have safety features. The Garmin Fenix 7X has crash detection in running and riding a bike. So if you fall off a bike or you crash while you're trail running, it'll identify that and try to call for help. The Fenix 7X is also compatible with Garmin's Live Track function, which uses your phone's connectivity to share your location to your friends and family in real time on a map. So they can see where you are, your pace, your heart rate, all of that information on a map using a link that you send to them. Keep in mind though that all this functionality when it comes to safety features on the Fenix 7X rely on your phone's connectivity for a cellular connection because it doesn't have a cellular connection built in. On the flip side, the Apple Watch Ultra also has crash detection, and a huge benefit to the Apple Watch Ultra is that it also has a cellular connection built in. So even if you don't have your phone on you, you can call for help using your watch. This is a big advantage for the Apple Watch Ultra. However, it is missing some other features. For example, there's no Live Track function on the Apple Watch Ultra out of the box. There might be a third-party app for that, but when you buy it, it doesn't have that feature by default. I will say though, as a solo trail runner and hiker for the most part, I'm usually alone when I'm in the mountains or out on these trails. I do like that peace of mind of having a cellular connection right on my wrist. Even though I don't always have coverage, it is a nice peace of mind. Ugh, smudged screen. Too sweaty. Okay, now that I've been out here for a little over an hour, I think it's time to go back home. So to do that, I'm going to use the navigation features on both of these watches to see how they do. Okay, first up is the Apple Watch Ultra, and the Apple Watch Ultra is kind of weird because it can see if I scroll through all the data pages on the Ultra that I don't have a map built into the native workout app. If I scroll through, there's no navigation features or map or anything like that. It's really just all of my workout details. So in order to get to my navigation features, I have to hit the digital crown here, go to my watch face, click it again, drop into my app draw here, and then look for the compass icon right there. And now if I want to navigate back to the beginning of my activity, I can do two things. I can go back to the waypoint I set at the beginning of my activity, which I don't really want to do, but I can click these little feet in the corner here to start a backtrack function, which will try to guide me back to the beginning of my activity. However, this track back function on the Apple Watch Ultra doesn't have any context. So there's no trail markers or roads or contour lines or any information other than a little red line to let me know where to go. Okay, now let's take a look at the Garmin Fenix 7X because it's a bit different. So you can see here, it's all of my workout details, but if I scroll through this a little bit, you can see I'll get to a page where I actually have a map view of my activity. Not only is there a lot of detail, but I can actually zoom in and out on this map so I can see even more of my surroundings. You can see the trail that I took into this point, the summit of the high point of the hills in this forest I'm in, and even more details all around me. There's a road over here, a highway. There's a lot of information on this map, which is really nice, and this is all built into the Garmin Fenix 7X by default. It comes like this out of the box pre-installed. Then we have back to start, which is the most important function of the Garmin watches, I think. I can click on back to start, and I've got two options. I can use track back, which will just generate a track back course back to the beginning of my activity using the track that I got to take to this point. That will be the longest way back. That'll just retrace my steps. However, there's another option here called route. If I select this, it'll actually generate a course. You can see that purple line there, and it will just take the shortest path back to the beginning of my activity. You can see if I pan down a little bit, you can see the course it just generated is that purple line, and that'll get me back to my starting point the quickest way possible, rather than using the track back feature, which would take way longer because it's like 2.5 miles. This is less than a mile to get back to the beginning of the activity. So as you can see, these two are just wildly different when it comes to navigation when you're in an activity. If you're trying to get somewhere, you're lost and want to get back to the start of your activity, the Garmin Fenix 7X takes it to a whole different level. However, there is one thing to keep in mind. The Apple Watch Ultra is an Apple Watch, so that means you can go into the Apple App Store and download hundreds of different apps for this watch, including mapping and navigation features. You can use an app like Gaia GPS or Work Outdoors and have offline mapping on the Apple Watch Ultra. However, in my testing so far with all these different apps, the mapping experience on the Garmin Fenix 7X and the Epix Gen 2 is just far superior in most ways compared to the Apple Watch Ultra, even with those third-party apps, but your mileage may vary. Side note, do you know of a good mapping app for the Apple Watch Ultra? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. All right, we have reached the end of the road here. We're back at the parking lot where I started my run, and now it's time for the moment of truth. Battery life between these two watches. So, on the Apple Watch Ultra, we have 93% remaining. We started at 100% and we've been running for an hour and about an hour and a half. So in an hour and a half, we lost about 7% of battery. Now on the Garmin Fenix 7X, we started the run at 70% and we are currently at 67%. So the battery used there was about 3% of battery in about an hour and a half. So big difference there, about half the use of battery from the Fenix 7X as compared to the Apple Watch Ultra. I don't think you're surprised by that. I'm definitely not surprised by that. And again, the Apple Watch Ultra was in low power mode and the Garmin Fenix 7X was in default settings. Also keep in mind that this is just my specific use case with out-of-the-box settings on both these watches. Of course, you can download additional apps and things like that to the Apple Watch Ultra, and it's a far more functional smartwatch, but today we're just talking about trail running and hiking, that kind of activity. So what's the conclusion here? Well, I don't really have one. I just really want to share my use case when I'm out on a run using these two watches and what I think about the features for this specific application of trail running and hiking, how effective they are, what the usability is like, the user interface, the navigation, all of that stuff, and the battery life. And I wanted to share it in this video today, and I think I did that. If you found this video helpful or fun or educational, make sure to give me a big old thumbs up and subscribe to the channel down below because that really helps me out. And if you're planning on picking up a Garmin Fenix 7 or the Apple Watch Ultra, check out the links down below because they help support this channel and I'd really appreciate. That's all I've got for this one. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Bye.